today I just want to talk about how shamed we can be when we don't have enough. We can feel as if it's our fault. Hello and welcome back to part 3 of sharing my story. So here's the weird thing. My last two podcast episodes were on the topic of money. I shared my stories, poverty, trauma, having options, etc. And even though I said I wasn't going to really do a theme, this is turning into some kind of theme because with every episode, I realize I have more to share and something else to say. And today I just want to talk about how shamed we can be when we don't have enough. We can feel ashamed. We can feel as if it's our fault, because baked into the society is this thinking, this unwritten thinking that if you are poor, it's something to do with your character, and if you're rich, you're of good character, right? Now there's a bit of a flip where people think that, okay, well, if you're like really rich, you're greedy and whatnot. But there's that. But for the most part, there's this shaming that happens when we don't have enough to meet our needs. Now, some of that is self-shaming, but even the self-shaming a lot of it comes from society. If you go to circles like masterminds of business people, it's like, oh, if you're not making the sale, it's your fault. Never mind the fact that the person you're trying to sell to has free will, and you could make the best presentation in the world and they still may not buy because they don't want it. Because people simply buy things because they want to, not necessarily because of how fancy your pitch is or whatever. And so I've come to see that, if somebody doesn't have enough, I don't want to use the word poor because, sometimes it's relative. You may not have enough at a certain time. And, the first thing we do is we tell them they don't have financial literacy, etc., etc. Sometimes it's not financial literacy because many times you can't financial literacy yourself out of poverty. If you don't have enough, the first thing you need is to make more money. And in my last podcast, I shared about how when my business took a downturn, I went and I started doing locums to, bring money into the business, into the home, take care of responsibilities and things like that, until I got to a point where, things were moving forward in my business, and they have continued to move forward ever since. And I have kept up those streams of income because, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I want more money because I want to be able to do good things. This morning, there was somebody in need in a group that I'm part of. And I was very happy that I was able to contribute to that need without having to think twice about it. So, money is not something that is inherently evil. I step forward and I say this again. Money has no character. Now I'm going to step back. From hearing about my parents, I said in my first podcast that they used to complain about rich people, the corporation heads, the government, there was a lot of grifters in government and all of that. And while those things exist, the truth is that not all rich people are bad people, okay? But a lot of us have this thing ingrained in us that rich people are bad. So even when we have either the opportunity to step out of that level, to go to a higher level financially, subconsciously, because deep down inside, we believe that rich people are bad or there's something wrong with being rich or wealthy, we hold ourselves back. And this is all happening at the subconscious level. Nobody is standing here saying that, oh, you know what, when I get rich, I'm going to hold myself back because I have poverty trauma. No. And for me, how this showed up is in, in negotiations, taking the first rate that was offered. And I've since learned not to do that. In business, reducing my prices because, maybe they won't buy it and things like that, right? Many times we have to look inside ourselves and realize that fine, there are certain things in society that exist, but there are a lot of certain things inside ourselves that also exist. For example, you and I are probably not going to take over the aviation system, right? Or you might, hey, we might not take over the aviation system, but there are things we can do in our own selves to improve our own ways of thinking so that we can continue to build more and more income as time goes by. There's also another belief that people have, which doesn't make any sense to me, that life will get cheaper. I remember being in a group and somebody was talking about the price of daycare. And daycare, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody in the group, these are people with small children. My children are grown, so I know better. And somebody said, don't worry, when they go to school, they'll become cheaper. I was like, what do you think is going to become cheaper when they go to school? You're going to have to buy more expensive clothes. And with the way clothes don't last, you're probably going to be buying, brand name clothes for a 6-year-old just because the clothes won't last. You're not going to be spending daycare fees, but you're going to be putting them in summer programs. You have to maybe send them with school lunches. You have to buy clothes. You have to buy shoes. You have to buy books. And children get more expensive as they get older. A couple of years ago, I bought my daughter a new car. I didn't have to buy her a car when she was 5. So when you face the fact that life gets more expensive and not cheaper, then you can start to think, okay, how do I, go back to the first episode, how do I get over any poverty trauma I have? 1. 2, how do I create options for myself within what I have? And here's the thing about our brain. When we start to look, we start to see. Have you noticed how when you buy a car, if you buy a new car or get something new, all of a sudden it seems like everyone has one? Everyone didn't suddenly buy one. They were always there. You just didn't notice because you were not focusing on it. Believe me, when you're less focused on, how the government is doing us dirty, how the greedy rich people are, and start to focus on, okay, how can I make my life better? And how can I start to see options for myself? You will start to see them. Because where your attention, what you focus on, it takes your attention, then it takes your energy too, right? When it comes to increasing your own income, your net worth, you have to be somewhat self-absorbed. And here's what I mean. If you focus too much on the government and the market and the corporations and all of that, it takes valuable energy away from things you can do for yourself. So for example, this is a concrete practical example. Instead of sitting watching news at 10 o'clock and bemoaning the fate of the world that you cannot change, how about you go on Indeed and look for a second job or a third job? How about you go to a large language model and create an email of how you're going to ask your boss for a raise? Because if you have a job, one of the ways to increase your income is asking for a raise. And there's nothing wrong with asking. Your boss can tell you no. But if you never asked, it was always going to be no in the first place. How about looking for another job? Another gig? How about looking for remote work that you can do in the evenings? There's a plethora of options out there, but you have to be able to think to yourself, like I said, become self-absorbed and think, okay, I am the one who has to make my life better for myself and my family. So yes, the government is going to do what it does. Right now, yesterday I bought gas for $6 a gallon. Yes, it's what it is right now. Because as I'm recording this, we're in the middle of this war with Iran. And honestly, I'm less concerned about the prices of gas than I am about those poor school children. I can't get them out of my mind. I can't get them out of my mind because I have school-age children. Not even because I have school-age children, but I can't get those out of my mind. So I'm less concerned about gas prices. But I'm saying this to make a point. When it comes to you and your family, you have to sit down and get creative about what you're going to do to better your own life. And I want to assure you, there are options out there. You don't have to be a doctor to have options. In fact, not to put too fine a point on it, there are many doctors who, are afraid of taking new options or, doing anything beyond, I'm just going to sit in one place, in one job and take care of all these patients for the rest of my life. So this is not a function of being a doctor. This is a function of thinking to yourself, okay, if I need to increase my income, instead of complaining about it, complaining about the government, having a money fight with my spouse, giving my children anxiety because I, can't give them what I want to give them, then sit back, take a step back, make a decision, and do what you need to do. So, this is part 3 of me sharing my story. This has turned itself into some kind of money theme. And I promise next month I'm going to go back to my other themes unless otherwise requested. But here we are. And I'm going to say, go back. If you haven't listened to my other podcasts, please go back and listen to part 1, part 2. And this one will make sense. So as always, this is me, Dr. Shola Ezeokoli, and I will see you next time.